Well, that was a little peculiar, I suppose. So, we're gonna get into some news, and I just, before we go any deeper into the show, because I have other stuff I want to talk about, I do have to talk about Roe v. Wade. It was leaked that the Supreme Court plans to overrule Roe v. Wade, and Roe v. Wade really isn't that drastic of a pro-abortion policy. I mean, it's not really a policy, it's more a dictum or like a jury Supreme Court. I don't know the word for it, but it's some court thing that dictates the types of policies that can and cannot be about abortion. And I consider it actually kind of a moderate policy. It allows states to restrict abortion in some ways, but it overall allows them to happen, and it's not very far-reaching. It was kind of like a soft policy because it wasn't, as people have been talking about, it wasn't codified into law as the policy of the land. It was just a court precedent that people followed. So it was in a tenuous position to begin with, and there really is no excuse for the Democrats to not have codified it into law before now. People have been making hay out of this, but if you're familiar, if you remember, Barack Obama, one of his big promises is that he was going to codify Roe v. Wade as one of the first things he did in office, and he had much more of the ability to do so at that time than Joe Biden does now. And it's not like even if Joe Biden could, he would. I think he's more or less made that clear. Joe Biden does not have much of an intention at all of stopping this, and even if he could, the way politics as usual work in Washington, D.C. and American politics in general would make it basically an impossibility. And I do want to say, I think there is a tiny morsel of a good thing about this. And of course, the whole thing is terrible. So I'm not trying to be like, oh, it's good because of this. This is just a minuscule silver lining. But I do think it is waking people up to the idea that voting might change individual politicians, but this system is structurally broken, and these kind of oppressive policies are instituted due to the structural system at play. The individual people don't matter. The structure is set up. Our political structure is set up and designed to work the way it is because there's all these little stops and roadblocks on the way. I suppose sadly, the real consequence of this is a lot of people being like, we need a Julius Caesar type figure to come in and dictate the policies we want. And, I am kind of a Julius Caesar defender because he wasn't killed because he was an authoritarian. He was killed because he was instituting policies that benefited poor people. That is one thing that is lost in translation in a liberal era is we always portray Cicero and Brutus, these anti-Caesarian, pro-quote-unquote democratic figures as being the liberals, and Julius Caesar as being a fascist because he sees power. But what we don't talk about is that the Roman Senate was one of the most conservative institutions in Rome. Julius Caesar knew that appealing to the public gave him power. He was beloved by the poor Romans while he was alive. He was hated by the rich Romans while he was alive. Anyway, my point is, some people might be in a mindset of like, well, we need a Caesar to just like fix all of this shit. Maybe he gets assassinated, but at least he fixed some stuff ahead of time and we broke through the crap. The issue with that is the US is too far down a right path. If some authoritarian seized power, it would not be a Caesar figure. It would be a Hitler figure. It would be a much more oppressive, much more right-wing. It would be a xenophobic, white nationalist, so-and-so, list could go on, oppressive, authoritarian scumbag. That is our crumbling society. The way it's set up is that only someone like that could seize power. Because under the current system, the left is blocked at every turn, and the right is kind of cordoned off and kind of put in their place, but they are oftentimes enabled by the people in power because they know they are a great tool at oppressing the left. The right, the far right, is able to do their thing if they are weakening the left, which is the people in power's main priority. So we're just in a real pickle, to put it lightly. We are not really going to be able to wrestle power away very successfully if it comes to a Caesarian style authoritarian dictator. We're going to lose that battle, and we're also losing the current battle with our ostensibly democratic but obviously clearly oligarchic system. And I've been watching Game of Thrones again, and I'll avoid spoilers, but I'll kind of allude to them. There is an episode where several characters die, and one of the other characters says, "The North will never, ever forget about this." And then the other guy's reply is, "Well, good, they should remember that next time they think about coming and marching on the South." And I think that's one thing that conservatives do not get. People will never forget this. This isn't just like one little thing. People will always know that they took away the right to abortion. People will remember that, and people will not be trusting of the government because of this. I mean, obviously, no one trusts the government. We already know that, but that's where it's getting to, guys. It's getting there that people are just done. And the thing is, we don't really even grasp how historically relevant this could be, because the only precedent of abortion rights being rolled back like this in a similar-ish country has been Poland, and I don't even think they rolled back their abortion rights as far back as the US has. Of course, Stalin made abortion illegal after Lenin legalized it, but that's under a very deeply different context. I mean, there's other countries that have rolled back abortion rights, but none quite on the level and scale that the US are. And so we'll have to see how things go in the future to really even determine the weight of this happening. Right now, we don't really get the extent that this is going to impact the world. But it is really freaking bleak. And one last thing I wanted to highlight about this is, maybe I'm not sensitive, like people might be saying this because they're sensitive to the issue and are trying to convert like evangelicals to a more softer stance on abortion, but I've been seeing a lot of takes that are like, no one is pro-abortion, but we're still pro-choice, and that is just such a terrible tack to take with that. It would be like, if you remember during the Bush era, when people were pushing for like treating like, what's the word, like creative design or intelligent design, and that the earth is like 6,000 years old, all that stuff. When they were trying to teach that in the Bush era, saying, oh, we're anti-abortion, we're just pro-choice. That would be tantamount to being like, you're right, the earth is only 6,000 years old, but we shouldn't teach about it in schools. Like, the idea that abortion is actually killing something is just metaphysical nonsense. A fetus is not a living human. And just thinking about it like that in any way is already ceding major territory. Like, what are you going to be like? Yes, I believe that aborting a fetus is actually the same as killing a baby, but I'm still pro making that choice. You sound stupid because you know that it's not actually killing a baby. A fetus is not a baby. It is the potential for a baby, but so is eggs and sperm. That is unrealized potential for a child. The whole framing it, like accepting this metaphysical frame about the nature of life and how life interacts with the material world, and at so and so months your fetus becomes imbued with life. That is just so spin off into metaphysical mumbo jumbo that it's not worth entertaining. It's not worth going there. Abortion is simply a medical procedure. The fetus does not have life. It is a parasitical bunch of cells that will someday become a living human being. Personally, for a long time, I used to think life exists the second you breathe the earth of the world, the second you are removed from your mother and take a gasp. That's when your life begins. And now I don't even believe that. I don't even think there is this like metaphysical property of life. It's making something mystical out of something that's very material. We just materially exist and function, and that signifies our life. You don't have to make it all complicated with like mumbo jumbo.
Stay away from the voodoo.
But I mean, there's a lot more that I could and probably will say on future episodes about the overturning of Roe v. Wade. It's not something I talk about a lot because for me it is a finished issue, but apparently it isn't. But what else is there to say about it? There's no debating anti-abortion people because they just believe in their kind of silly, fantastical worldview about the nature of life and what's in it. And, it's not, their views of abortion are not supported by the church historically, and it's not supported by the biblical text. It is all extrapolated into what is basically a culture war issue that really only became this major of an issue in the form it takes now because Republicans got evangelicals on their side by making all of these like pseudo-religious political issues that kind of activated the evangelical political voting bloc for Republicans.
Ben Shapiro destroys the abortion argument.